Most brands will come to us and they've been selling on Amazon for 5, 10, 15 years, and they're either flat, stagnant, or maybe not growing at the rate that they wanted to, or maybe even losing some market share. And they're trying to figure out new ways or to know which products to push and pull, or which new products to go after, etc. And a lot of brands just haven't done the basics, or they're like pre-COVID. They still haven't tried the new things that are different since COVID hit, where it obviously changed a lot of stuff.
One, two, three.
Welcome to the Smartest Amazon Seller Podcast. I am your host, Scott Needham. And the goal of this show, this podcast, I've been doing this for 5 years, and it's still the same, where we just want you to be a little bit smarter about the opportunity of selling on Amazon. There's a lot of different ways to succeed, and but it's just a huge marketplace. And I find that if you keep your mind open, there's always something that you can do. If you're an active seller, or you want to sell, or you're a brand that is wondering, how does this Amazon thing work? Just keep your mind open, because there's always new angles, specializations that people are tackling it. And I have a guest who has seen the variety of ways to sell and to work around Amazon. I have Mike Danford, founder of Adverio, and he's done one of the things that I love the most. When I talk to someone, bring him on the podcast, he's transitioned. He's seen the multiple different ways of operating on Amazon, and we'll jump into it. Mike, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Looking forward to it.
All right. So yeah, let's just hear your story. You started out as just an Amazon seller, and in a variety of ways, and learned some things the hard way, I presume. And yeah, just let's give us your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So back 2014, found ASM, American or Amazon Selling Machine, or whatever it's called, and kind of got into it, and started looking into building my own supplement. That was a health supplement for my dad's arthritis and joints, and that was great. It's a little slower than I wanted to be in the beginning, and then it was all about going and doing retail arbitrage or online arbitrage. At the time, I was living in Charlotte, had access to a bunch of.
So wait, you started a supplement and you were arbitraging?
Correct.
Which one happened first?
Started with the supplement first, and then trying to bridge the gap, I started doing the retail arbitrage because I already had the account. So
yeah. Was that bridge the gap more to be like, hey, I want to be a full-time Amazon seller and I just need to do this?
Yeah, it was more about trying everything. I gave myself, 6 to 8 months to see what would work, and want to know how to do it. And then a buddy of mine came up from Florida. He was traveling all over Florida, buying thousands and thousands of Nikes every weekend. He came up here and showed me how I did it, and I started doing it.
Okay.
So that was kind of like happen chance,
Were you mainly in shoes? Did you kind of follow that same?
Shoes were easier, just the way with the packaging, quicker. The software that we were using was much easier. You could get into some of the apparel, but shoes were just much easier to move. You could really understand the demand and what we would sell.
Yeah. And once you jump into apparel, it's a bigger beast, larger catalogs. Who knows what actually, customers want, but I can always tell you they're going to want the latest version of of Nike's running shoes. That's always in demand. So then take us, I always like to find where people started, you're part of the Amazon selling machine, kind of that's part of your pedigree, so to speak. I've got one that's similar where this person got into it, then this person got into it, then educated my brother, then this. Yeah, so there's some dominoes that everyone kind of has that brings them into it. But what are the next stages? Did this supplement brand, evolve?
Yeah, it worked out really well. Again, my dad was able to use it when we were doing our trials and everything, and it really actually worked well for him. I had a little bit of arthritis or onset was coming on, so it was great. And what I learned there is, we were using a pretty common formulation at the time, and it was all about who could outmarket whoever had this similar, formulation. Then I realized like it's really hard to go against the Costco's of the world or the Kirkland, if you will, on Amazon and some other stuff as well. So kind of plateaued in our revenue, and it was like, hey, do you want to go to the next level? You got to bring out a bunch more products or invest this much capital, or it's going to be expensive to kind of take more market share. And then at the time when I was slinging the Nikes, I was like, this is just so much easier, selling black and white tennis shoes. And it was just faster and easier and quicker. And it was kind of a manual process, which kept me engaged with it. And then I had someone that said, hey, I want to add, a joint supplement to their catalog. Would you willing to us to pick it up? And I was like, yeah, because I didn't want to make that next big investment at that time. Because I'm 23, 24 at the time, trying to figure it out. And then just kept doing the Nikes. And as I was doing I still did the advertising for the supplement after I sold or got rid of the brand or the product, and started posting some of those results through the Facebook groups and whatnot. And the feedback was, hey, this looks awesome, especially in the supplement space. Would you mind doing it for us? And they would pay. And then kind of the history from there is just growing, starting in the ad space, and now doing creatives and full service management as an agency.
Interesting. What year was when you got into PPC? I mean, or like started doing that?
Yeah, 2014, 2015 is where all this kind of all took off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's 10 years from now. it's a lot has evolved and changed. You said one of the things that like you've had success with some of your clients, it's something that I've seen as like a unique challenge, and that's large catalogs. You think of apparel, you think of maybe even like auto repair, like just like lots of little pieces, lots of parts, lots of SKUs. And that starts to make your spreadsheets look bigger. How did tell me some of your experience with like these large catalogs?
Yeah. Most brands will come to us and they've been selling on Amazon for 5, 10, 15 years. And they're either flat, stagnant, or, maybe not growing at the rate that they wanted to, or maybe even losing some market share. And they're trying to figure out new ways or to know which products to push and pull or which new products to go after, et cetera. And, a lot of brands just haven't done the basics, or they're like pre-COVID. They still haven't tried the new things that are different since COVID hit, where obviously changed a lot of stuff. And, we commonly have after, the first 3 months or so of working with a new brand, they're like, hey, this product we haven't sold this in years, and now it's like our top 10. How do you do that? And how we do that is different. There's ways of looking at the SEO side, conversion rate, optimization, et cetera. And then there's obviously advertising. And then one of our, more recent levers, probably in the last year or so, that we started pulling is dynamic pricing to help us with that. And it's just, now, I head up our technical side and development side. And we're pretty good at being able to see from a sales side when a product is moving and has potential, and kind of pour more gas on that through our profit pulse system. But what I'm trying to work on now is understanding, the lift or changes in a click-through rate and conversion rate before the traffic kind of catches up onto that. So we can see if we can be a little more proactive to those, losers and winners, et cetera. So that's kind of fun for me now, getting into more of the machine learning and predictive analytics for sure.
I guess, what do you see with like, say, a catalog of like, say, a dozen SKUs versus a catalog of 1,000 SKUs? And from the brand management perspective that you have, like, what's like the different initial approach? If it's 12, it's like, it's not that hard. Whereas like it's 1,000, you're like, okay, if I'm rolling out advertising across all of these and they have small differences from each other, maybe it's different variations. One piece of clothing can actually have like 500 variants if you got size and color and all that.
So for a smaller catalog, I feel like you're really able to focus on the incrementality and minutia within a product, a lot more split testing, whether image, copy, et cetera, and really just going all in. And then I think if you're faster to try to find external traffic and factors to these products, and you're kind of just living and breathing those. And then from there, it's, how can I bring other products in? Looking at market basket analysis, what is being commonly being purchased with my products? Is it a different variation, different size, combination? Is it a totally different product altogether? We find that all the time. And then with a larger catalog, the faster way to increase revenue and profit is generally just going after the B and C tiers of the catalog, the ones that have been forgotten about, the ones that have dust on the shelf, or hey, my COGS has changed and I haven't really pushed it. It's better now, or things of that nature. So
I've heard sometimes like on that with like the B and C tier products are like, on Amazon, it's easier to turn a good product into a great product than a bad product into a good product. I'm sure like both of our like framings each have like their where it's totally true. But tell me about these like C tier products that you're like, just give them just a little bit of love and then things change.
Yeah, so we have a C1 and C2 tier, and with that, it's usually the quickest lever. There's two levers that we pull. It's going to be advertising, kind of a low cost. They probably never advertised, or they haven't advertised in years, so we don't really have any good data. And and now, obviously, with the pay to play space, if it's been 3 or 4 or 5 years since they've really pushed, it's lost a lot of visibility, and sometimes just getting it going with a little bit of traffic. And there's a process that we graduate through the budget and really conservative, cheap clicks just to see what happens. And, 15, 20% of that will start to surface up. And then we can try to see if we can move it from the C2 to 1 and the B. And obviously, A would be a long-term strategy. And that's when. Then the other is, let's play around pricing. Let's not really spend any money on it. Let's just see if you can get some additional conversion, improvement or click-through, et cetera, just by getting more competitive on pricing, et cetera. So those are fun to just play around with those. And then to your point, I like that. We haven't heard of it or talked about it that way, but I would say it's easier for us to get a B into the A than, like you said, instead of a C into a B group, for sure. It's a lot of work if a product really isn't getting any traffic or activity, as opposed to something that's getting a little bit and it's a good product. It just needs to be reframed differently or put a little more, effort behind it, for sure.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned dynamic pricing. That's kind of a new conversation. There's a few players. I'll just name a few, but I've had conversations with both. We got Prophecy and actually Trellis. These are tools that are talking. I know there's a few others, and so forgive me if I don't get everyone that's like talked about repricing, but you're seeing private label brands really think more about pricing and using automation more than ever. And what's your experience with like this piece, and how does that affect like some of these brands that you work with?
Absolutely. Well, again, working with larger catalogs, those platforms you mentioned, most of them, one of those two that you mentioned is much easier for them to handle larger catalogs, a lot more products than the other. So that's great. It's kind of a spray and pray approach where we can kind of just go in and put some min maxes in and see what happens pretty quickly for those. And that's been fun. And then the others are, going into that A group where, it's already pretty well optimized listing. You have pretty efficient, pretty effective, and kind of maxed out on your sponsored ads, maybe even getting to the DSP as well. And then within that group, you'll also have some that are like top sellers in their category, and there's really not more real estate or market share available for that particular SKU.
Yeah.
So now you're trying to squeeze out more profit without.
I've got one experience where we had a product go viral on TikTok, and like we had a lot of inventory, but it also happened to be Christmas. So the thing is like we were making like 15% gross margin, not like a ton, but I started playing around with like increasing $1 or $2, and it didn't really impact sales. Actually, I think I even tested $5 or $10. Like I tried it all. And it's amazing how with these like A tier products that there's actually more profit you can make. Do you risk competition? Sure, but that's kind of the magic of something a little bit more dynamic. Is if you're able to optimize for a specific goal. Well, you could change that goal within a week, 2 weeks. They'll be like, okay, let's make profit. Then later, you're like, no, let's sell the units. Let's be the winner. I guess what I'm saying is, from our perspective, even changing the price by $1 for 24 hours made a margin. It made an impact on like that day's gross margin, like that day's profitability. And so there's just when it comes to dynamic pricing, the B tier guys, like you could do some stuff with pricing, and the A tier guys, you could do different stuff with pricing, and both of it matters. It's both like meaningful.
Absolutely. Tons of different strategies, around tentpole events, trying to squeeze out more juice or preserve inventory if you're kind of going low or you got a late shipment coming in. And then there's, trying to show what charm pricing, if they have charm pricing, like, hey, let's add those few cents back to it.
I've never heard the term charm pricing.
Yeah, so charm pricing is where you want to end at a 9.96 as opposed to a 0.99 or an even dollar. Right. So yeah, they got these special things or whatnot. So getting those few pennies back, we sell a lot of apparel, so it's millions of units a year, millions of pennies adds up, over time, right? And then kind of just playing around with that and the small incremental changes. Again, like to your point, there's so many different ways of doing it. And then doing like anchor pricing, where you're playing around with individual variants and colors to see if you can get them to convert better or anchor your price better to make them. There's so many different ways of doing it. And that's where I love the machine being able to help us do that and look at the demand elasticity versus the profit elasticity as well.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I was looking through our email history preparing for this, and I came across one that I was like, oh, wow, this is full circle, where I, on my newsletter, gave a shout out for a new little tool, a new Chrome extension that it's called Seller Central Utilities. And like, I think, you got wind of it and you started an email conversation with Yuri, the founder. And I'm excited because I've heard great things about it, but you're the first that, it seems like, you kind of glow up when you hear about it. So tell us a little bit more about the Seller Central Utilities, how you use it, where you think like some of its biggest benefits are.
Sure. Yeah, Yuri's great. At first it was talking about search query performance and kind of digging that and how do we automate, like through a robotic process automation or RPA, pulling the data at a product level or an account level. We have so many different accounts, et cetera. So we built that. And then released where when you're inside a campaign manager, you have a separate chart that gets kind of pushed above your campaign manager chart. And it will show you your tacos, PPC conversion, ad conversion, and percent of ad sales. Obviously, this is not inclusive of any DSP advertising dollars, but it makes it where when you're inside the campaign manager, you can just quickly see how your somewhat of your profitability based on tacos, and then kind of see how the ads are converting versus. Yeah. It's excellent. I love the way
it's interesting that he's built two free solutions that are very different. One is very like the search query performance, like some of the data, be able to get that into Excel over time in a way. And then he's like, oh, and by the way, I'm creating these charts. They're a little bit better than Amazon's. They have a few more data points. I actually have one question. So the search query performance, what's the main value on that his tool provides that you don't get?
Admittedly, we don't use it. We build our own RPA process that goes directly into our dashboard, but it's a very similar concept that he has. But you could do it at the ASIN level, and we do that sometimes. We're trying to go back on a few products, but for us, we build our own on top of it, so it's kind of cool.
Well, tell us about like the what kind of insights do you get from a history of that report of the search query performance?
For us right now, we have a lot of brands that have more than your normal tent poles. So we'll have a lot around the U.S. holidays, Father's Day, Mother's Day, et cetera. And it's going back and looking at the data. One, what was your share over time? What were some other terms you may not have missed or didn't catch at that time? And then also you'll see some stuff kind of bubble up as we get near those tentpole events that may or may not be on your radar, and the type of semantics are a little different. That's pretty exciting as well. And then it's just good to, going back to a smaller brand, we can pretty much get a good idea of what your TAM is just inside of that, and at least your search TAM, if you will. We can do that for your brand as well, and kind of say, hey, your search, the ownership of your search across all of your products, because you're limited to, if you do the comprehensive report, I want to say it's 2,500 or 3,500 rows. It's changed a little bit. And that just kind of like shows you how you're doing on your search and what Amazon thinks you're doing well of over time. So that's pretty cool for us to kind of understand where to push and pull. Then obviously you can get into, there's ways to reverse, like what's your CTR versus the competition, what's your conversion rate. And then you can kind of get an idea of your pricing as well, at the product level, but really at the search term level. If there's a lot of traffic and the top sellers have, a lower price than you or higher price than you, then it kind of gives you an idea of what to and what not to push, and kind of how to position yourself as well. That pulls unique insights. I mean, the list goes on as they continue to release the data and improve the data.
Yeah. Well, you guys have also built your own set of tools, but like we're thinking like spreadsheets, visualizations. Tell us about more of that development, and why and how people can use them.
Yeah, absolutely. So typically we have two different teams. We have kind of a data science team that works in the Google suite and kind of makes light, nimble reports. Anytime a new brand comes in, we're trying to find something unique for them, or build it, or kind of a play box or sandbox is a little easier for us. And then we have another team that we work with that does more of our, full, BI and reporting intelligence, et cetera. So we take these concepts and we build them and play around with them, and then we give them to the other team. And once we build them, they're useful for us, and then we let other folks have it. A lot of times it's how to manipulate and visualize the data that Amazon's giving us. It's a lot of data. How do you collate it? How do you put it together? And then what's the best way to visualize it? And then now we're starting to bolt in some machine learning into that as well, and helping you, how to set it up and how to data mine it through GPT once it's presented, a bunch of other things. So it's kind of my projects. We have a full-time data scientist that works with me every single day, every single week. What's new? What can we do? What's Amazon releasing? We see a report we like. Hey, can we reverse engineer that? Can we improve that? Can we do it for the rest of our brands, et cetera? So it's fun.
Awesome. And you guys are you're giving some of those out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's on your homepage. If people want to, want more tools, free ones. I actually really like, spreadsheets, because I don't know, they're easy to configure. They're easy to understand, like what's going on. And that's on your website, Adverio, right? How do you spell that?
ADVERIO.io.
How did you get that name?
I don't honestly know. I wasn't a part of that process. I didn't have an ads in it. I wasn't.
You're like, oh, good enough. I'll run with it.
Yeah. I was involved with the V, up and to the right, and then you can't see, but there's a rhino over here. So we have a mascot that's a rhino as well. So a lot of stuff with that right now for our social content and some other things. We've personified a rhino. So it's fun.
Nice. So how do you feel about, this post-COVID? What are some predictions or like comments like where's Amazon going?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I kind of like to take a little bit of a page out of Bezos' book, where he talks about like, hey, let's focus on what's not going to change for the next 10 years, and let's kind of build around that, as opposed to having the shiny object syndrome. Obviously keeping a pulse on that. So I try to do that myself. It's just trying to figure out how to pull more levers. Amazon's starting to give us more data than they've ever given us, which is awesome, but there's limitations to that. And then it's, how valuable is it? Let's take a look at this data, understand, do we need to focus on it? And then how can we do it at scale, and how can we improve it and enrich it for ourselves and for our brands that we work with? Obviously right now we're pretty big in the space on the AI side in terms of mining, textual data, as well as now getting more into the images and videos. We've been playing around with Amazon Recognition, Cosmo, Rufus, all of those. And I think that's where it's going. It's way more conversational and a lot more NLP or neuro-linguistic programming involved as well. And like, what am I going to use this product for? So your lifestyle images and need to be more outside of just the search terms. Because when you go in now with Rufus, you're asking some questions. I need this dress for our shirt for Polo or whatever for this event, and I'm going here. What's the best one? And it goes to ask a few questions, and then it gives you a search term.
I didn't know that. Does Rufus will ask you follow-up questions?
Yeah, you can. It depends on how you communicate with it. You can literally ask it pretty much anything. Pretty interesting to play around with it. But you want to give it more like use cases, et cetera, and it'll kind of guide you as well.
Okay.
It's pretty fun.
That's cool. Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you for giving him some of your time. Love hearing, some of the transitions that you made, as I think that gives people a lot of perspective. I've made multiple transitions, and it's always exciting. But thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, Scott, thanks for having me.
Okay, well, we'll wrap up there. Thanks everyone for listening, and stay tuned for our next podcast, and we will catch you then. Take care.
1, 2, 3.